All right, for our next topic, it's a culture heavy episode. This episode, Shira, we wanted to talk
Okay.
about Sequoia's culture war moment here. Sequoia, if you don't know, is pretty much the number one investor VC in the entire planet. They're definitely in the top five. They've invested in all the big companies you've ever heard of. They're very, very well known, well respected in Silicon Valley. Well, they're in a bit of trouble. A partner at Sequoia just lit up social media with a series of anti-Mamdani posts. Now, Mamdani is the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York, and he's controversial, or at least he's been made to be controversial because he calls himself a democratic socialist. He's actually is a Muslim background, and he has made comments like, "I don't think there should be billionaires." They're also trying to tag him with being anti-Semitic, which is basically a lie. So he's very controversial. The billionaires don't like him in New York. Some of the kind of hardline right Jewish community in New York don't like him in New York, and some of the hard right anti-democratic socialists don't like him in New York. And so there's a lot of headwinds against this guy. A partner in Sequoia, Maguire, his name is, last name, posted on X, where else but X. Mamdani comes from a culture that lies about everything. It's literally a virtue to lie if it advances his Islamist agenda.
Oh, wait. So it wasn't just like political; it was Islamophobic. So I think that's like.
Straight up, yeah, racism here.
So like, I think that's the line. What's the line? You can talk about politics. I think generally, like, hey, I believe that these people deserve these rights. Oh, I believe that this needs to change. Like, this would help more people. This wouldn't. Why certain policy? Blah blah blah. I think when you get that personal and you are racist, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, any of those things,
Mm-hmm.
then yes, that's
Yes.
an issue. It's not just a political, cultural issue. That's an issue.
Yes. I mean, there's more and more people saying the quiet part out loud, right? He added, the West will learn this lesson the hard way. This is a partner at Sequoia. Broad industry backlash here. 900 tech founders, VCs, and employees signed an open letter demanding that Sequoia apologize, investigate, and enact anti-hate measures. He responded, this guy, Maguire, issuing a 30-minute video saying the tweet went extremely viral and not in a good way. To any Muslim that is not an Islamist, and to any Indian that took offense with this tweet, I'm very, very sorry. He didn't retract the substance, though, calling his critics Marxists and leftists, and doubled down on X, saying, "You only embolden me." Anyway, so look, there's a lot flying around about Mamdani in general. I think a lot of it is exaggerated misrepresentation and disinformation. I mean, he's not popular with the powers that be. You know, he is one of the most articulate and disciplined communicators I've ever seen. I'd say he's like Obama, except he doesn't kind of waffle in this professorial sort of way. He's like that other senator who's really like poetic in the way he speaks and has just got the right word at the right time. I've forgotten his name, ironically. He's amazing, and whatever people ask him, he sort of answers the question very, very well, very, very quickly, very, very definitively, and then if it's off his topic, he just reroutes it back to, "But I'm here to help everyday working New Yorkers and
Yeah,
reduce
yeah.
the cost of living." He's just like very disciplined on message, and he's destroyed the Democratic primary field. So I don't know, Shira, what do you make of this? I don't know if you've been following Mamdani. What do you make of him?
I
What do
mean,
you make of
I'm not
Sequoia?
deep. I'm not deep in it. I have a lot of people have a lot to say. Clearly, he did something right. Could anyone have won that? No. I mean, I don't know, but I think it is timing. It's the right timing for someone like him and his views, his values, his background. Like, it's like the stars aligned, right? For someone like him to show up in the way he has, using social and all these things. Clearly, he's doing something right, despite what different people think, depending on your background or what part of the political spectrum you're on. But then beyond that, I just feel like I think that I support standing for human rights and being on the right side of history. That should inform your views in terms of what you invest in and what you stand for as a company, as an individual. I think when you start doing personal attacks that are steeped in bigotry and, again, hate, there should be no room for that. And it's not surprising why then he was asked to apologize, etc. Because imagine what folks who are Muslim feel about that, right? Having someone like that as your boss who said that, like
Right.
probably very uncomfortable, right? I'm open to talk about what his policies mean and who it helps and what his background is in terms of his experience. Other than that, it's like, okay, like what are you talking about and where is this coming from and what is your intention here?
The popularity of Trump on one side and Mamdani on the other side is unsurprising to me at all. It's a reaction of struggling people who can't find their footing,
Yeah.
who are looking for some way to break the system and reshape the system. The people on the right are blaming immigrants and the people on the left are blaming billionaires. But the problem is, personally, I think it's more about the billionaires because the money is not distributed well. There is no social safety net in the US, and the minimum wage hasn't moved 1 inch in far too long. And so, other countries, to other people in other countries, these problems are utterly obvious. There's no debate in other countries. It's only in
This
America.
is like the basic stuff that they have. They don't even need to run on these things because they're like, oh yeah, that's like we already have all that stuff. Like, give us something else.
That's right. These topics are utterly ridiculous in most other countries around the world, mature, developed economies. As it relates to Sequoia, which is the tech angle we want to focus on the most, I'll use the word bitterly disappointed in the leaders in tech these days. I'm Silicon Valley. I bleed Silicon Valley. I love the Silicon Valley philosophy of scale and disrupt and make things better through creative disruption. That's my religion. But the way that Silicon Valley values have been applied in some of the richest and most prominent people these days, only in the last 5 or 7 years, it's turned toxic. Our leaders and the people that are most visible used to be principled, liberal, focused on the future, humanist, kind. And these days, they seem to be needlessly cruel, careless, myopic, mercenary. They resemble more like big tobacco or big oil than they do big tech. And I'm bitterly disappointed. I'm heartbroken by it. And there needs to be, there is the Reid Hoffmans of the world that are providing a counterbalance to that. But it seems like the minority of the people.
And Mark Cuban.
But in terms of the visible, A tier of people who seem to represent the Valley, it seems like there's a minority.
Well, it sucks because these people have access to the most money, the most ability to create change, and the things they're trying to solve, are they needed? Totally. Yeah, but then it's also like, why then turn a blind eye to clearly people who are begging for some other solutions, who are basically your consumers and customers, right? Like these are the people that use your products and they are dying and begging for help. And yet
That's
you're,
right.
figuring out another algorithm to feed them and make them buy something instead of literally looking at like the basic stuff that needs to be solved. I think it's such dissonance, right? And it's tone deaf to like what's actually happening.
That's the ultimate irony, is that Silicon Valley could be a solution to many of these problems. It could build products and services.
But it's built off of that.
That's right. But the problems that generally get solved, some of them are useful, and some of them you could argue, or many of them you could argue, are net positive. Right? I think there's a whole story around why Uber is a massive advantage to the world. There's a story around why Robinhood is a massive advantage to the world. There's a story around why Airbnb is a massive advantage to the world. There's a story why Facebook and Twitter were massive advantages to the world. There is also a story where there is many, many unintended consequences of those platforms. And then there is an entire investment thesis you could have about addressing those unintended consequences with yet more products and services from Silicon Valley. Actually, it's one of my dreams is to build some kind of accelerator, some kind of whatever that directly looks at the unintended consequences of Silicon Valley's best laid plans or best intentions and addresses those with yet more intentionality. But instead, what we're doing is just moving fast and breaking everything and not looking at the rubble and saying, hey, maybe there's some stuff we could build to fix the rubble. I'm not for a moment suggesting we slow down, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that disruption is bad. I'm not suggesting for a moment that Facebook, Twitter, Uber, Airbnb are inherently bad. I think they were all built with good intentions, and they all have good outcomes. I don't know if on balance, but they have good outcomes. There's a blind spot in Silicon Valley for the unintended consequences, and there's a big missed opportunity for investing in those unintended consequences, which is itself a massive has a massive upside potential.
You know what it's called then when people do a nonprofit or social impact, right? And like that's so messed up, right?
But here's the thing. I'm such a believer in Silicon Valley philosophy. I'm a little bit skeptical about nonprofits and NGOs. I find that
No,
the
it
lack
shouldn't
of
be that. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to start a nonprofit or be a social impact company to make a change and help people.
Yes, and I don't think most of those entities actually help people at scale because there's
Yeah,
no
there's a bit of that
profit
too.
motive, right? There's no profit motive. There's no alignment of intention. They don't tend to attract the smartest, best people. They tend to get mired in this kind of bureaucracies and consensus buildings. I really think that the profit motive, if properly used, properly targeted, could be targeted at humanitarian style problems and deliver results that are better than most, not all, but most charities
Yeah.
and nonprofits. I think it's that the Silicon Valley commercial imperative and the kind of the equity ownership, move fast and break things methodology could be more effective in the venues where nonprofits are operating. Could, but it's just not applied that way. Now, you could also look at like Bill Gates, the way that his thing works, he's investing like a VC almost in entities, in companies, in efforts that have a commercial imperative but solve a fundamental human need. And I think something in there, the Gates Foundation is the model where you're deploying capital for commercial outcomes in humanitarian spaces. And I think that's where I'm most excited, most interested. But whatever it is, the people that we have speaking most prominently in Silicon Valley right now, from Thiel to Musk to some of the others, are really not representing us well. And yeah, it's sad. And Sequoia now has been sucked into this, and I think this guy should get fired.
I mean, I don't think this is a good look. It's not going to help them get, I think this is the first thing that companies look at. I mean, the right companies would say, I don't want to work with this company. This is like the future big companies who have younger founders. They're not going to want to work with someone like this or be aligned. Like it's a values thing, right?
Yeah, people have been fired for much less during the peak of cancel culture, right? This guy is straight up bigot. And and he's obviously not getting it.
And he's continuing to double down. Anyway, moving on. Before we get a headache, let's move on to greener pastures.
Well, those are our thoughts on Mamdani, on the political climate, and on Sequoia specifically, and the bigotry from this one Sequoia partner. What do you guys think? Join us down in the comments below and let us know your thoughts.